Bruce. But that's really all she has going for her. Once you use that ability, you kind of like, you blow your load, and you're kind of like, well, there's nothing else I can do. Here are the 3 pilots. I'll go online succession. In Pegasus, or Exodus, I think it's Exodus actually, there is the CAG position, much like the Admiral and the presidential positions. The CAG is more about, Captain Vergard, it's more about controlling Vipers on the board. They have more access to Vipers and they're able to control better, and also your special crisis cards that they have to choose. So in that regards, they're pretty powerful, because if you're silence the CAG, he can kind of sabotage himself by not slaying Vipers out correctly or pretending like he doesn't know what he's doing. Also, there are special crisis cards that are really bad. CAG cards are always bad CAG chooses. So if this were the game, he would be the CAG. I mean, if this was Pegasus or whatever, Alert Viper pilot. When the Viper is placed in space area from reserves, you may choose to pilot it and take 1 action. You may only do this when you're on a location on Galactica, excluding the brig. That means, let's say if somebody else is playing and they activate command, they launch 2 unmanned Vipers. The player playing as Lee or Apollo can choose, I want to pilot it, and they can pilot it and take 1 action. So they can pilot it and move, and then the guy can then the person in command can move it. I think move it 1 more time. Well, actually, you can't move the player. You can't move a player's ship, but you know what I mean. So it reflects his ability. Like on the show, he's almost the first guy. Oh, he's almost always the first guy in the Viper whenever the enemy shows up. CAG. Once per game, you may activate up to 6 unmanned Vipers. Like I said, he is the CAG on the show. Activate 6 unmanned Vipers. That means you can activate one Viper 6 times, or 3 Vipers 2 times each, vice versa, whatever. Headstrong. When you're forced to discard skill cards, you must discard randomly. Like I said, if you have a hand over 10, if this character has a hand over 10, if you're playing as him, then whatever cards you discard have to be discarded randomly. That means you have to have somebody, basically, you have to shuffle up your deck or pick out yourself, or have somebody pick one out of your hand and discard that one. Lee, I've never played as Lee. I think he's actually pretty flexible in the politics and leadership roles. His secret strength, I would say, is that he's probably he's like the middle of the road guy in terms of succession. He's 4th to become president in the vanilla version. However, in the other expansions, they had 2 more political leaders who were higher than him. But he is probably the first non-political leader to be president, if I get my line of succession right. And it's reflected on the show. President Liadama, like I said. And you can see on Admiralty, he's pretty high up there too. Yeah, I believe in the show he is a major or a colonel. Or something like, no, I'm sorry, Colonel. Ty is a colonel. Lee, I believe, is a captain or a major. He eventually becomes a major, but I think in the beginning of the show, actually, he's a captain. So here's Starbuck, who is a lieutenant, if I believe, right? Starbuck is the Ace Viper pilot. She's probably the best pilot on the show. This is a card she draws. 1 leadership, 1 engineering, pretty decent. Encounter to repair some stuff. She's a pretty good character. Expert pilot. When you start your turn piloting a Viper, you may take 2 actions during your action step instead of 1. That means if you're out in space, actually, since you get movement in the actions, that means in space she's allowed to move once and take 2 actions, or move 3 times. Space is kind of different. Space, I believe movement and actions are the same thing, but regarding her ability, I think you're only allowed to, I have to consult somebody, because I believe shooting somebody is an action and moving is moving in space, according to this. But also, one thing you could do as Starbuck, which is pretty funny, is if you start off in space and you choose to move inside Galactica, you can activate a location twice or use 2 action cards, which is permitted by the rules. And that's an ability you might want to think about using once in a while. typically, if you're out in space, you typically gonna be shooting Cylons down. You don't really want to go back inside Galactica. However, if you're a Cylon, you can use that to your advantage. Secret Destiny once per game. Immediately after a crisis card is revealed, discard it and draw a new one. So it means you can just pick another crisis card. It's pretty weak once per game actually, because you're talking about like Laura Rosalind can do that pretty much on her turn on Perpetual. It has to be Starbuck can do it when it's not on her turn, but Laura Rosalind does it every time on her turn. So, like I said, each character's strengths and weaknesses are varied. And a lot of these characters you have to think out the box, which I'll get to in a minute. So, insubordinate. When a player activates chooses you for Admiral's Quarters location, reduce the difficulty by 3. It's because her character is kind of a hothead. She doesn't respect authority. So it's easier to throw her in the brig. So reduced by 3, that means this location here becomes a 4 skill check. And if Saltai is active in the game, let me get Saltai's card here. If Saltai is in the game, that means he may choose to reduce the difficulty again by 3. That means it becomes a 1 skill check to throw Starbuck in the brig. Which is pretty funny because Saltai and Starbuck at the beginning of the series don't like each other. And it's kind of funny because he wouldn't hesitate for a moment to throw her in the brig. And I already went through her. And the last, but not least character is Boomer. Probably the least popular character, according to my friends. I kind of shut them up when I played Boomer and I ended up winning. There's a good reason why she's not really liked. Her weakness is a big deal, but I'll get to that. Recon. At the end of your turn, you may look at the type card of a crisis deck and place it on the top or bottom. And that's pretty decent, but that's at the end of your turn, so it's not the crisis that you draw, it's the crisis card after you draw it. And it says you may, so you may choose not to, but you pretty much always want to. But then if you're a Cylon, you might want to choose not to, because if you're a Cylon, well, here's the thing, you could fool people into think you're a human by leaving a jump card on top. But if you leave a jump card on a card without a jump on top, then they know you're a Cylon. Mysterious Intuition. Once per game, before resolving a skill check on a crisis card, choose a result, pass or fail, instead of resolving it normally. This doesn't work on Super Crisis cards, but as you can see, both these powers work while you're inside the brig, and that's important to know because her weaknesses during the sleeper agent phase, you are dealt 2 loyalty cards and then move to the brig location. Much like Gaius Baltar, she gets two extra loyalty cards. Well, 1 extra loyalty card. So in the mid game during the sleeper agent phase, she's more likely to be a Cylon, and you're automatically moved to the brig, which neuters you greatly. As you can see, both her abilities still work while you're inside of the brig, and you definitely do. If you play Boomer and you're stuck in the brig as a human, I feel really bad because you definitely do not want to be a human Boomer. Or you have to trust that your friends will be able to bust you out. And I believe that's it. That's the box. This is the book that comes with the rules of play. Not that thick of a book. There are a lot of rules, like I said. I just pretty much explained the whole game to you. And it takes a while, but the game is pretty long. The book has a lot of pictures in it. Nice colorful pictures. These are damage tokens. Galactica damage token, base star. Those are damage tokens for our location. So when the Galactica is hit, that location is a hangar deck. So if anybody was on the hangar deck, they would be sent to sickbay instead of, you don't really die. The only times you actually die is when you're executed. That's the word, executed. When you see that word, that means you're dead. You're really dead. Dead players, by the way, dead players, if you die and you aren't a Cylon, you lose in morale. and you have to choose another character. And I think it fits it with the same constraints. When you choose characters, you have to choose a different title than than what the other players have picked. So if somebody picks Boomer, you cannot pick Starbuck or Apollo until somebody else has picked a political leader, the support guy, or a military leader. And then once those requirements are filled, then you're allowed to choose again, essentially. And once you choose again, the same rules apply. So you can't have a whole team of pilots. You can't have a whole team of like military leaders. They have to be. It's to make the game more easy. It's to make the game more fair, because you don't want. If you notice, the ones with the tiles on them, piloting cards, that's typically the majority of what they draw. So like Starbuck is 3 piloting, I believe, if I remember right. Or she gets 2 piloting. Well, like I said, pilots draw more piloting cards than, say, Galen, who draws 2 engineering, which I think is the highest that somebody from engineering can draw. And then military leaders typically draw more leadership. Bill Adama can draw 3 leadership, I believe. And Ty can draw 3 tactics. Admiral Kane can draw 2 of each type, and then the extra card could be either 1 more tactics or 1 more leadership, which makes her like a much more well-rounded player than Ty or Adama. However, she's regarded as like overpowered for the humans. That blind jump ability, she has the ability to be able to jump even though the fleet track is like theoretically in the start of a game, if the first player is Kane, she can immediately choose to jump. The distance is 6 or lower, and at the beginning of the game it is, because you had a distance of 0. She can jump, and you have to destroy 2 civilian ships, and which are in the flashy thing I just showed you. Civilian ships just fell to the bottom, along with Bill Adama. Oh yeah, those are the facial tokens. I'll try and introduce the characters. That's oh, I already did. I forgot. The damage tokens. The tokens with the player's faces on them are piloting tokens. Those are the characters that can pilot Vipers. You place those tokens on the board with the Viper on front of them, on top of them, I mean. So it shows that they're being piloted by an actual person. They aren't unmanned. And that's important to know, because I think unmanned Vipers are easier to blow up. Manned Vipers are by, I think, 1 dice roll power, or 1 dice roll number. I think that's pretty much it. I'm not going to get into nuances of the rules. I think I've explained everything pretty well. There's a line of succession again. If it focuses, you know, it's the president is the last to be admiral. The Starbuck and all that. Again, Boomer is more likely to be president than Sultan. That's pretty funny. Galen Tyrrell is actually pretty heavy in the politics. I think they revised the they revised him on the politics board and put him up like maybe here. Would make a lot more sense. He is much more political than Adama or Agathon. But that's not until later. I wonder when this board game was actually made. I'm thinking maybe 3rd season. But again, adding Pegasus in the first iteration of this board game would be really confusing. But yeah, that's it. It's the box. Battlestar Galactica, my favorite board game. There's Edward James almost. Look into my eyes. Look into my eyes. You're getting sleepy. Sleepy, you fracking toaster. You fracking toaster.